Hello coders, this is Jared with Renaissance Coders, and in this video I am actually going to be providing an update or fix for a previous Cinemachine tutorial. We were recently contacted by several members of the Cinemachine team, and they gave us a lot of pointers on how to use Cinemachine and some of the best practices for Cinemachine as well. So with this new knowledge, we will redo our clear shot camera transition video that we uploaded last week. Basically, in our previous video, I created an extremely convoluted method for making our Cinemachine clear shot cameras change targets. In this video, we are going to set things up properly. Now, if you have actually watched the previous video, then you know that I created several clear shot cameras that each had their own virtual camera, and then I updated the priority of those cameras via script, which did actually get the cameras to transition between one another, but again, that's extremely convoluted, and Cinemachine actually makes this really easy to do for us. Okay, so I have created a new scene here that I will be using, but you can really use any scene in order to create this. The main things that we are going to cover in this video are the setup of a clear shot camera with virtual cameras. We're going to add a Cinemachine Collider to our clear shot camera. We are going to choose the target for our cameras, and we are going to review some blend methods between the cameras. So let's of course start off with our setup. So if I go and look at my scene here, we can see that we've basically just got like a really simple maze, or like a level of a building, something like that. I just wanted it to be really simple and allow for multiple camera angles pretty easily. And actually I'm going to zoom in a little bit to where I'm just inside here, and I actually have a ceiling that's a plane that we can easily see through. So I need to make sure that my Cinemachine cameras aren't too high up on the walls, or we will be looking at the ceiling, or the ceiling will be like right up on our camera. So we definitely don't want that. So let's go ahead and actually add our clear shot camera into our scene. To do that, I'm just gonna click on Cinemachine, and I'm gonna click Create Clear Shot Virtual Camera. Now when I create this, we can see that the CM logo pops up next to the main camera. That means that we have a Cinemachine brain on this camera. We have a new clear shot camera in our scene, and that clear shot camera has a virtual camera added as the child, and it's also added at a position of 0, 0, 0 in the world, which is pretty nice for smaller worlds like this. Okay, so in the previous tutorial, I really messed up because I created multiple clear shot cameras in order to handle this, and we really only need one clear shot camera in our scene. But the clear shot camera does need multiple children. So right now I've got my first child, which is just this virtual camera right here. And so what I can go ahead and do is actually position this where I want it to be. So I want it to start off actually at the end of this hallway, sort of looking at the player here. So what I can do is actually move it over a little bit, and I'm just gonna move it up. Let's go 3.5 in the Y. That should be pretty good. I don't think we're gonna get a lot of interference from the ceiling here, so that should actually work out pretty well. And I'm not gonna worry about rotating these to look at the player or anything like that, because the clear shot camera will actually handle that for us, and you'll see that in just a minute. The next thing I actually wanna do is click on my clear shot camera, because we need to add another virtual camera here. So to do that, I can simply go down to this plus button here, just click on it, and it adds a new virtual camera for us, which we can see in our hierarchy here. And of course it adds it at 0, 0, 0 again in the world. So this one I'm actually going to move like back over here a little bit. Definitely want to make sure it's not inside of the wall here, so just get pretty close to it. Looks like it is actually inside of the wall. So, and then I'm just going to move it up to 3.5 in the Y again. So this guy should be pretty evenly spaced, so we can see kind of down both of these hallways and watch our character. Of course, we're gonna have a blind spot down this hallway for this camera, but we won't really have a blind spot here, because this camera on our center wall will be able to see kind of through here, and this one will be able to see through here. So we should be pretty good with this camera here, with these two cameras combining to watch the player. Now I'm going to go back to my clear shot camera again, and I'm just going to add another one and click on it. And what I'm actually going to do here is check out this virtual camera, and I'm just going to copy the X and paste the X and reduce and change this from a minus to a plus. And I'm also going to copy the Z here And that should be pretty good there. We just need to move it up in the Y to like 3.5. Very cool. And as you can see, we also have the CM logos for these virtual cameras so that we know where they are in the world pretty easily. Okay, and this one will work much like the one on the other side of the hallway, where this camera will actually be able to watch at this angle, and this one will be able to watch from this angle. So we shouldn't really have any positions where the character will not be seen. This hallway is a little bit different because it is a really long hallway, but there is a really easy way to actually fix this. Okay, so let's go ahead and add a few more virtual cameras. Again, I can just go to my clear shot camera and click plus here, and I'm gonna go ahead and add like 3 more. So I can go to my 4th one now, and I'm actually gonna put these 3 inside of these rooms. So I'm gonna go ahead and start moving these guys over so they can go into like the corners of these rooms. We're pretty close to the corners. That's pretty close right there. And we wanna go 3.5 in the Y again. Very cool. Now I'm gonna go to my 5th one, and I'm just gonna move it to the corner again because that's actually pretty easy to do really manually. Okay, and 3.5 in the Y. And now for this 6th virtual camera here, I'm going to actually move this one forward, so it's going to be on this back wall here. And of course, 3.5 in the Y again. So now we have 6 virtual cameras actually in our level. Now, one hallway that we're not actually watching is this back hallway here. So I really need to add a camera here to watch along this hallway because we will have several blind spots along this hallway. The tricky thing here is actually finding the best place to watch the character down this hallway. So I'm actually going to add 2 more virtual cameras just to do a test. I'm going to add one right here at this end and another one at this end and just see how it chooses between the 2. So let's go ahead and go to our clear shot, and we're just going to add 2 more here. So we're going to go 7. And for this one, it should be like 23 in the X, 10 in the Z, and 3.5 in the Y. So let's go ahead and check out that positioning. So that's not as close as to the wall as I want to be. So let's go ahead and move it a little bit closer. That's pretty good. So let's actually set it to 24 here. Very cool. Now what we can actually do on our 8th camera is just do a -24 in the X, a 10 in the Z, and a 3.5 in the Y. So I actually built this level based on that scale to make it really easy to actually place our cameras in the scene. So hopefully the way this will work is if I take this path, we will start with this camera, and then once I round this corner and this camera can no longer see me, then this camera will take over. Now the tricky part here is going to be where the transition occurs between these 2 cameras. So basically I could round here and stick to this wall, and I think this camera will take over really quickly. But if I stick to this wall, I really want to see what happens when I do that, because it may be able to watch me all the way down to this corner, so this camera may never actually take over unless it's doing a distance check to see if I'm really close to this camera and this camera can see me, then it needs to take over. Okay, cool. So now we actually have Cinemachine clear shot cameras set up and the virtual cameras set up in our scene. And this is more virtual cameras than I've ever actually used before. Most of the time I try to stick to like 4, but I really wanted to try and push the limits of what Cinemachine can do here. So now that we have that set up, let's add the Cinemachine Collider to our clear shot camera. So I can click on my camera here, and I can actually do an add component, and I can just type in Cinemachine Collider, and that's going to add the collider that we really need for this to actually work. Without this collider, the Cinemachine transitions will not work automatically, so you definitely have to add this. And as you can see, we've got a lot of different variables in here that are available to us, but we're not going to cover a lot of these. The main ones that I do want to talk about, though, are the collide against and the preserve line of sight. So right now we have a collide against of default, so that's which layer we actually want the camera to collide against, and we have preserve line of sight checked to true. And basically what that will do is if our character is hidden from any virtual cameras, then it will move a virtual camera to where it can actually see the player for us. So it's sort of dynamically positioning the camera to actually watch the player, which is really cool, but it removes a lot of the control that we have over the shots that we're actually getting. So we're definitely going to play around with this a little bit just to see what we can do with the preserved line of sight, but I'm going to save that for the end. So now that we have our collider set up, let's add our look at transform to our Cinemachine clear shot camera. So up here we have our clear shot script here, and we have a look at transform variable that we definitely need to set up. And we only actually have to set this up on the clear shot camera, and it will pass it to the virtual cameras as needed. I do have one important note here, and that is that the Cinemachine team suggested that we not look at a bone or transform that will constantly be in motion, because the camera will attempt to continuously look at that bone, which may cause some jitter in our camera. Now, I have already tested this a couple of times, so I'm going to choose the neck bone of the third-person character controller because it is actually fairly static. Another big point here is that we probably don't want to actually pass the base transform of our character, because then the cameras will actually be looking at the character's feet, which could again result in some bad camera angles. So if we're doing the preserve line of sight, and we passed in just this transform here, then the camera will be moved to a position so that it is looking at the character's feet, which is definitely not a pretty camera angle. So let's go ahead and actually toggle through our transform. Of course, we've got our skeleton here, and let me actually focus up on this guy. It's kind of hidden here, but I'm just using Unity's standard assets third-person character controller. And going through the skeleton, we can see that the base skeleton is at the feet. We've got the hips. Then we've got the bottom segment of our spine, our left and right legs. Then we have the midsection of our spine, the top section of our spine, and our neck. Our neck actually contains the head, left and right shoulders. And each of those have sub bones as well, but I'm just going to choose the neck here. So if I go back to my clear shot camera, I can just drag in the neck as my look at. So when I did that, we can see that now all of the cameras in the scene are actually pointing at our character's neck. So it automatically set that up so they're all looking at the neck. As you can see, there's a lot of like blue lines and stuff going on, and they're all trying to look at this at the same time. So it may look a little confusing, like a bird's nest right now. You know, there's stuff going all over the place, but basically that's what those blue lines are doing, is they're trying to show that the camera is actually looking at the player. Okay, so now that we actually have that set up, let's actually go through and do a quick test. So I'm just gonna save my scene really quickly and press play. Okay, so here we are, we're in the scene. I've got my character moving, and the Cinemachine camera is actually updating and watching the player. So let's go ahead and turn to the right here, and let's now turn here. Now when I do that, we can see that the camera transitions from the first camera to the second one. So now if I run down this hallway, and it looks like the distance check is not actually occurring, which is okay. We can still see the character pretty easily, and it's easy to just add like a wall or some sort of subsection or divider along this hallway to make sure that this camera can no longer see the character. So now let's go ahead and turn right here. And of course it did transition to the closest one. And if I go in here and hide, we are actually now using the preserve line of sight. So right now, if I go to my scene view and focus up on my character, we can see that a virtual camera, or our main camera, is actually being moved here, and it is actually watching our player. And as you can see, it is moving a little bit, and that's because of the animation on the character. So the neck bone is actually shifting a little bit now, but it's not so drastic that the camera is just sort of freaking out. And that's why it's important to actually choose the neck bone here, because if I had chosen the feet, then our camera would be much lower and it would be looking at the feet, which is not a very pretty camera angle. Now, of course, I can run out, and it actually transitioned to a different camera there, and now we're back on this camera. And if I run into my room here, should transition to the corner cam here. Pretty cool. And now I should be able to run out. And it transitioned to the hallway camera again. Now we're in our big like green room here. Alright, gonna move out and transitioned to the farther camera. And move down this hallway again. So now we're getting the dynamic positioning again. And now I can actually run into this room here. Okay, very cool. So as you can see, it is actually moving the cameras around pretty well here. So it did not choose this camera again. Now it has actually chosen it because I've hidden from the camera down the hallway. So I should be able to move down this hallway a good bit. And I'm expecting it to choose this camera, but it may choose the one on the center wall. So let's see. So it did choose the one on the center wall there. Again, that's fine. As long as we're seeing our character, I'm pretty cool with it right now. Okay, so let's go ahead and actually stop this. So as we can see, I could honestly stop the tutorial right now because that was really simple, really easy to set up, and it's pretty freaking cool that we can do this that quickly. I do want to actually turn off the preserve line of sight. Now, I'm doing this because I don't really care what the player is doing down this hallway. Okay, so we actually have several other settings here that we can play with, but for right now, what I want to take a look at is the default blend that we're using for our cameras. Now, you probably noticed that instead of just immediately cutting to that next camera, that our camera is actually using an ease in and out function to move from its current position to the next virtual camera's position. And it's really easy to change this. Actually, the Cinemachine team suggested that we use the cut default blend here because it will immediately go to that next camera. And we don't have to set up a time constraint for this blend as well. So again, if I go back to my ease in and ease out, we can see that right now it's set to 0.5 seconds. So it will take 0.5 seconds for it to ease in and out to that next position. So again, I ran this way. So as soon as this camera over here decides to take over, our main camera will transition from this position over to this position over this time. But that's not really what I want here. I want to use a cut. And so let's just go ahead and change that. Press play and see what it looks like. Okay, so again, I'm just gonna run towards my first camera here, and I'm actually going to stick to this wall now. And as we can see, when I stuck to the wall, it immediately cut to that next camera. I'm actually gonna try to stick to this wall again. There we go, very cool. Now, one thing that may be a little confusing is the character, when the camera changes angles that drastically, the character tries to turn around and run the other direction. But that's okay. So now I've also got my preserve line of sight turned off, so I can actually run down this hallway here, and the cameras do not transition. Again, if I run down here, run down this hallway, it actually changes to the closer camera, but we still cannot see the player when he goes down this hallway. Okay, and if I go into a room, it should transition to that room's camera. Very cool. I was really shocked at how easy it was to set up. When I created my initial video, I thought that maybe we had to do some scripting, so that's what I did. But then they contacted us and said, hey man, that was an okay video, but you definitely missed out on the cool parts of Cinemachine. So I'm really glad they added a comment and pointed this out to me because I'm just in awe of how cool this is. Now, we do have a couple of other variables that I want to take a look at here really quickly. Again, I'm not going to dive deep into this because we do want to cover a lot of this other stuff in later videos. For example, a video we're going to create later is the custom blends. We definitely want to create a video that covers this custom blends in depth so that way you coders really understand how to set these up and all of the different ways that we can use this. For now, we are actually going to take a look at the shot evaluation. So this gives us an optimal target distance. And based on the tooltip here, it says if greater than 0, a higher score will be given to shots when the target is closer to this distance. Set this to 0 to disable this feature. So this is what we need to actually choose the cameras based on distance. Okay, so I'm just going to set my optimal target distance to, I don't know. Let's try a value of 1 initially. So let's go ahead and press play, and I'm just going to see what happens here. So I'm just going to run, get close, and turn, and we should be right at the midpoint. Now we're definitely close to this camera, and it hasn't changed yet. So let's play with the optimal target distance here, because that's like a value of 2.3. So let's move now and see what happens. So we should be pretty close. Okay. All right, I'm kind of cool with that. It's interesting that you have to use a value of 2.38. I'm definitely interested to see how they did the math on that. Okay, so now let's run straight down this hallway and see where the transition point is. So this should be our center point, like right here. So I'm past the center point now, getting really close. Okay, so it changes sort of a little bit late. So let's actually change this up a little bit more here. And let's run again. We're at the center point. Oh, Oh, so now it's going into the room. That's actually kind of cool. And boom. Oh, there we go. So it definitely cut between the two cameras there. I don't know if you noticed the flicker or not. You probably did. But it tried to go to the two different cameras between the room and this camera here. But I definitely like the way that looks, you know, so that way we're sort of watching our character run by. You do have to change which button you're pressing when you're doing this, though. So I'm changing from W to D here. And we are getting a little bit of jitter, or, you know, it's trying to figure out which camera to use. But again, that's okay. There's definitely more we can do to help alleviate that issue. But again, I did want to just create this video to cover the updates and to cover the fix for the clear shot camera transitions. So let me go ahead and stop this. Okay, coders, that is actually going to do it for this video. We are, of course, going to be covering more Cinemachine videos because we definitely love Cinemachine and we want to get to know it even better and help you coders know it even more. So we're definitely going to be releasing additional videos covering Cinemachine. And we are going to be releasing videos that are going to cover some of the other new features in Unity 2017.1. So Darren is actually working on videos covering the new post-processing stack, which is really cool. I actually don't have any post-processing effects in this video here or in this scene, but I could easily add them in, but Darren is actually covering those himself. So be sure to watch out for those videos. Let us know if you would like to see something covered from 2017.1 or anything else in Unity, and we will try to create those videos for you. And I definitely look forward to seeing you coders in those videos as well. Okay, coders, I hope that you enjoyed that video. We are constantly adding new videos here on YouTube. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It allows us to continue making great content for you coders. And if you are feeling extremely generous, please check out our Patreon account. Here are a few of our other tutorials just in case you want to keep on learning. If you become a patron of Renaissance Coders, you can get access to our source code and our project files as well. Okay, coders, that's going to do it for this video. As always, thanks for watching.